have a bit of an update on the Ciocca situation. What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. This week, in my search for the latest news and information about the C8 Z06, I turned up a lot of interesting information, including a specific timeline for the MacMulkin Dealer Tour for the C8 Z06. Alright, so quickly I want to get into a couple recent sightings of the car out and about in the real world to give you a little bit better sense of what it looks like outside from stage studio shots. Up first, we have two different spottings of the same car. It's an Elkhart Lake Blue Metallic C8 Z06 base package. It doesn't have the high wing or anything. Spotted outside of Warren, Michigan. There isn't a lot of new info about this car specifically, but you can see it's got the low wing and the standard wheels. Additionally, it's the hardtop convertible, and it appears in one of the photos, you might be able to tell that it's got all-season tires or maybe even winter tires, which, given the background of some of the photos, actually has snow in it. That actually makes quite a bit of sense. Unsurprisingly, the color looks very much the same as it does on a C7 Corvette, but I will say that seeing this in person, and now we've got a couple different photos of it out in the daylight, I think it looks really, really good, especially when you get some dark accents along the sides with the underskirts, or maybe the lip spoiler or the big wing on the back. I think the car actually looks pretty awesome in this color. Now next we have an interesting clip of a C8 Z06 starting up. It's a very, very short clip. There is going to be a link in the description for the video if you want to see it. There's a lot of sound and stuff that's not really my thing, but it's actually really cool to see the car in person, and a few of the shots of the car, if you mute the audio, actually look really good. You get to see the car up close. It's got the high wing, and it actually has the stock black wheels, which I think look really good. We haven't seen too many cars out and about on the roads with the black wheels. It's nice to see and gives you a sense of how it looks with the actual color of the car. Now, in case you're wondering, this is not the fast food Z06 as it's starting to become known, the one that was spotted at Wendy's and then later at a Taco Bell. The license plate is different, as well as these are different wheels. All right, so the last spotting that I wanted to touch on is actually a little bit of a throwback. If you go back to early November, there was actually a post floating around from Corvette Forum where someone found a torch red Z06 sitting in the parking lot. Now, these are some older photos. If you've been searching around online, you've probably already seen them. But for those of you who haven't, I think it's actually one of the best sets of photos of any non-camouflage Z06 that we've seen. And torch red is a color we've only so far seen the one on the car carrier from last week's video, and then there's this one. I'm not aware of any others at the moment. Now, what makes this car so interesting is a couple things. One is it's debadged and it doesn't have a wing on it at all. It doesn't even have the low spoiler. So that's kind of an interesting little tidbit about it. The next thing that's kind of interesting is that it also doesn't have the front splitters and all of the associated aero that you would expect with a car with a Z07 package. Most of the cars that we've seen out in the wild tended to have that full aero pack and the big wings, so seeing this car without that, it stands out a little bit. And the last thing that really stands out to me is that the front splitter on the car is actually also painted in torch red, the same color as the body. This gives the front a little bit more of a cohesive look, I think, and it really stands out well with the rest of the car and the black wheels. Most of the press cars that have been making the rounds at various auto events and shows have had a different colored lip spoiler than the rest of the car. This is one of the few that we've seen out in the wild that doesn't have that. It actually has the body color matching. Now, if you go back to the Corvette reveal video, it's one of those blink and you'll miss it things where there's a couple cars in the background shots or a couple shots of the hardtop convertible driving around, but it's so brief on the video you may not even realize that that's an option to have, which I think actually looks really good. It's something that I might consider for my own car. Now, a few people have been speculating about why doesn't this have a wing, and I think there's another clue here that actually gives you a little bit of an indication. It doesn't have the front badge either on the car. And what some people are speculating online, and I think probably is a reasonable guess, is that the car may have been one of the early wrapped prototypes where it had that camo wrap covering the whole car, and then for whatever reason they decided to take the wrap off, maybe to wrap it again, or maybe to put on some of the aero bits and do further testing at a private track. But we haven't seen this car since. I haven't seen any other photos of it, which makes me think either it did get rewrapped, or maybe it was brought over to the proving grounds and it's kind of away from prying eyes at the moment. Now, I've got a quick question for you, the viewer, mostly because I don't have a good sense of this, but if you take a look at the wheels on this red Corvette as well as the previous one that I showed, they are black wheels, or they appear to be to my eye, but they appear to have a satin finish. Now, are these the black wheels and maybe they have brake dust on them, or do you think that these are the satin graphite wheels potentially? I've heard people saying both, and I'm just curious what everybody thinks. It's not real clear to me, so maybe that's something you could help me out with. All right, so up next we have a bit of an update on the Ciocca situation. Big thanks to subscriber Bill Blake for reaching out and sending me this information. I really appreciate it. He has a reservation with Ciocca and has been in touch with them. He says that as of this week, Ciocca told him that they've had 1,900 people drop off of the reservation list. Now, with around 6,000 total reservations, losing 1,900 of those is a pretty significant jump. This is roughly a third of the overall reservations, and whether it's for the drama, whether it's because they asked for additional money in order to hold your reservation spot, whatever the reason is, that's a pretty big drop. So if you're one of those higher numbered reservations, you actually have bumped up about a third of the way towards getting your car. Now, it's still going to be probably a multi-year wait. Don't get me wrong, I think it's going to be a while. But given some of the information that Chevy has shared, including in my last video, about the car not being a limited production vehicle, I think you stand a pretty good chance of getting the car if you just sit tight. So that's some good news for some of the people higher up on the list. And last but not least, I have yet another update about the MacMulkin Dealer Tour. It seems that things are moving pretty fast and we actually now have a time frame. Big thanks to CyberGV09 for reaching out. He's one of my subscribers. Right after my last video aired, he reached out to me and said that he actually had an email from MacMulkin that confirmed a narrower timeline of when this was going to happen. The time frame from the week of January 7th was within a month or two. Now that puts us at either somewhere in early February all the way to early March. But that actually gives us a much narrower window than we were anticipating, and I think that's really good news. Now, one other point to mention is that the last time around with the Stingray, MacMulkin only announced the date about a week from when they actually would have the car, and then the event itself was only 1 day long. So it's something that once we find out, it's probably going to move pretty quickly, but stay tuned. I will share that info as soon as I have it, even if it means a separate video outside of my normal Friday schedule. And if you plan on attending, keep an eye out for me and feel free to say hi. Before I close, I wanted to make a quick clarification on the last video. So I wanted to be really clear. The context around the Z06 not being a limited production car is in regards to the entire production run. That's specifically why I said that you may end up having to wait a while. And by a while, I guess I wasn't clear enough. I mean that it might be a year, 2 years, 3 years. It might be more than 3 years, depending on where you are in a line and at whatever dealership you have a reservation with. But I am very confident that if you have a reservation in and you're comfortable just waiting, similar to myself, I think you will end up with the car eventually. And that's what I mean by not being limited. Other cars in this context that actually are limited would be like a 911 GT3, where Porsche, the manufacturer, has said, we're only going to make X number of these cars, artificially increasing their scarcity, adding to their exclusivity, and ultimately, obviously, their price as well. That's the point I was trying to make. Sorry if I wasn't super clear about that. I will try to be as clear as possible going forward, so thank you to those who have pointed that out. But I wanted to clarify things so nobody was left wondering what I actually meant. Also, since you were hearing it from Shad Balch, who is the Director of Communications for Corvette, I feel like that's a pretty good source, and the context of that conversation was very clear, but in case it wasn't, I wanted to make sure I set the record straight. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this and you're interested in the C8 Z06, please subscribe, give me a like. I'm going to be doing a lot more content about the car. I'll be sharing info as I get it over time, and then certainly once I have more access to the car, while always getting through to the truth, citing my sources, and then trying to provide factual information rather than just responding to speculation or hearsay. So anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, Fred out!